Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner operator of Something Wicked Entertainment Event, and I want to welcome you to our program today. So, what we normally do on our program is we take an individual horror film. It can be from any decade, it can be from any subgenre, and me and a special guest will come on and we'll critique, analyze, generally have a conversation about that movie. We want to get into the nitty gritty and to the nuances of the films that we talk about. Now, sometimes this conversation can be extremely fun and entertaining, and sometimes it can just be entertaining. So we hope that you are enjoying us talk about these films. Now, before I get to the title of the film that we're going to be discussing today, I do want to introduce our special guest for today. His name is Philip Ray. Philip, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Philip has done a lot of episodes with us, talking about a lot of interesting films. But the film we're talking about today is a more recent film, which we don't cover that often on the podcast. But to try to change things up for the new year, we've decided to add some of these more recent films into our little oeuvre of conversations. So we are talking about the 2025 Stephen King adaptation of The Long Walk. And so it's going to be interesting to discuss this long before we do our actual Stephen King franchise month. So first of all, Philip, I do have to ask you because I have not read the book yet. Have you read the book for this before watching the movie?
I did not. I didn't even know about the book until I saw the trailers. I remember I came upon the trailer and I was like, the hook for me was seeing Mark Hamill. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then I looked a little bit about the book and stuff. But yeah, I mean, when I walked into this movie, I knew the gist of the stuff from the books, but I definitely had not like read the book.
So this is one of the only Bachman books that I had not read from Stephen King, his pseudonym that he used to use, Richard Bachman. And this is the only one I had not read. I have no idea why I had not read this one. For some reason, I had skipped over this one and just never read it. But it's interesting now because it's been on my shelf forever and I have not gotten around to it. So after seeing the movie, I definitely will sit down and read that book in particular. And I've read a lot of Stephen King books. So everyone listening out there, I grew up reading a lot of Stephen King books as a kid. And then over the last decade, I've actually switched a lot over to audiobooks because he's just so damn prolific with his writing. He writes so much and it's so hard to keep up. But listening to the audiobooks have helped. But I still have not done the reading or the audiobook for this one. So it's interesting coming into the movie, and I really did enjoy the movie. So it's a doozy of a movie, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I love this movie. It is my best. It is the top movie for me of 2025. It is my favorite movie I saw of 2025. We'll go a lot into it, but I mean, again, for me, I think what made me really enjoy this movie was two things. The acting was just great. All of the actors were great, especially the two leads. Copper Hoffman, who is Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, and then David Johnson, who, again, if anyone has seen Alien Romulus, like that's why everyone, like he's had movies before that, but that Alien Romulus was his big breakout, and then this was again his movie as well, and again it's just done so well, and I think another big thing what I like is the story, just the theming of brother. I love brotherhood like themes because the premise for our viewers who may or may not be aware, it's basically it's another death game, but it's set in the 1970s. But essentially, each 50 boys, one per state, have to go on this walk where basically it's an elimination, and you basically just keep walking until you're the last one surviving. And if you are the last one, you get to make one wish. But what this movie does differently, and the story does differently compared to a lot of like Squid Games and Hunger Games, is that unlike the other stuff, no one wants the other people to die. This is one of the few death games where I've seen where the combatants don't want the others to die. They actively try to help each other, even though they know at the end of the day, only one of them gets out. It's you, other than one moment in the story, you don't see a lot of betrayal. You don't see a lot of animosity. It is just 50 boys going on a walk, bonding with each other in this death game as they slowly all get picked up in very gruesome detail. This is a rated R movie, and this movie lets you know when the first boy drops. It like I'm not sure you experienced Kevin watching the movie, but when the first boy goes and it's done in a gruesome way, I'm like, oh, okay, this is the tone we're going for.
Well, so with this film, I kind of saw this as an extension from what King had done with The Body, which became the movie Stand By Me. He has a knack of doing these films about kind of like not just brotherhood, but companion and friendship between characters. We saw it in with that. If you've read the book or seen the movies, he's done it in The Body, which became Stand By Me. Even in the very bad movie Dreamcatcher, the friendship and bond that these characters had when they were kids, which then transfers to them when they're growing up. But this one, it's these kids are not expected to be friends at the very beginning of this. That's the thing I liked about this one. We're coming into this as though these are becoming friends for the very first time. Most of Stephen King's stories have these characters having grown up becoming already friends when we get to their lives. But in this one, they're not friends. They don't know each other. They have to introduce each other because they're all from different states, all from different walks of life, all different types of characters. And the film does a really good job of having lots of different characters from different walks of life, especially one of the characters who's Native American. It's all different kinds. It's all different types. And I liked that aspect of the film.
Every character, when you have a movie like this where it's like you have 50 boys, it is very easily to think you're going to have a lot of carbon copies or not a lot of distinct personalities. Now, mind you, some of the boys are fodder and stuff. You don't there are some that are killed off screen, but I would say a good like 10 to 13 of the characters that they established with the boys are all distinct. They all have distinct personalities, all distinct looks, all distinct motivation and stuff. You know, like they never are like, oh yeah, this is just this character, but they all have different motivations for the walk.
And and the film does a great job with slowly going through all those nuances of those characters as they're walking. Like, to be honest with you, a movie about a bunch of kids walking on the road probably in on paper probably sounds like a very boring movie. To be honest with you, it probably works out much better as a book or novella, which is probably why this film took so long to be adapted into a film. Kind of like what happened with Stephen King's Gerald's Game. People couldn't crack it for years and decades. They just didn't know how to make the movie work, the story work as a movie, because that's very hard. And with this film, and since I haven't read the novel, which I wish I had, I don't know how much of what was added or changed by the director Francis Lawrence, and I just don't know who the writer is for this. J.T. Molnar, I guess is the
Yeah.
writer. I don't know
So
how much was actually from the book versus how much they kind of modernized and changed because the book was written so long ago.
so some of the changes, the ending is the big one. The ending is a big change from the book. The from who wins, the person who wins is not who wins in the book. It's someone else. You probably can figure out who was supposed to win originally, but they changed it. And the ending and what happens after that is also changed, about what actually happens. It's a lot more open-ended and a lot more just kind of yeah, it's a little more open-ended in the book versus this, where it's a little bit more action-y a little bit. And then some of the characters, like their either the body type or their motivation, like were edited a little bit. So like the main two, our Ray and Pete character, for example, it's more stated out in the book of them kind of, at least the Pete character being gay.
Mhm.
Uh, in the movie, it's hinted a little bit, but nothing is straight out said. In the book, it is straight out said. But yeah, and what's interesting is, especially with the change to the ending and stuff, Stephen King thumbs upped it. They
Yeah.
basically JT wrote the change because they had a different idea of it, presented to Stephen King, and Stephen King said, I love it. He actually said he thought it was better than the ending that he had written for the book. Uh,
Which is not surprising considering that the Bachman books originally were stories that he couldn't get sold until after he became famous, and then he finally sold them under a pseudonym. So I'm not surprised about that at all.
but what's interesting too is, and I didn't know this until, doing research and stuff about the movie for this episode, there is an alternate ending that is more traditional, slightly more traditional to the book. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to go into spoilers or not, but basically, it's instead of the character, the winner who wins is still the same, but what he does the opposite. What happens in the theatrical release, he does the opposite in the alternate ending and stuff, and that is more akin to the book. That is actually how the book ends. So the alternate ending is a little more akin to the book, minus again changing who wins. The winner is different.
I actually liked what they did with how they presented the winner in this film. I think that was the most logical way to do it without audiences. I mean, I think there is, from the moment you watch the film, there are some preconceived notions on how the film might end, and I like the way it ends.
Yeah, I do
Um,
too, because my thing too with it is if they did a straight up from the book, it's so just like I'll just say because it's not I don't think it's that big of a spoiler. In the book, the winner just walks. Like they win and they just keep walking. And that is it. Because the idea is that they're walking into it just says the book, the winner just walks into the darkness. It's basically it, with the idea that they may have passed away from exhaustion and stuff. Um, I'm okay with that. I think that again they try to do that in the alternate ending. I think that's okay, but again, I think it's especially during a film, doing the change makes sense.
oh yeah, and plus you gotta remember it is a film, and you have to satisfy your audiences in the last act. Unlike a book, which can end however the hell the author wants it to end, um, films, in order to be not only successful, not successful monetarily, successful as a film, a piece of art, a piece of entertainment, has to end with its biggest reveal or moment at the end. And a lot of films are criticized when they don't, when they fizzle out. It's the reason why, despite it being a box office dud, The Mist is still remembered. It's because the shocking gut punch of an ending that it has, which Stephen King also said he liked better than his original ending. Um, and it's hard to appease Stephen King. If Stanley Kubrick couldn't do it with The Shining, it's gonna be hard to appease him.
Oh yeah, no. And again, it's like these changes make sense. Again, the ending change makes sense to in the end.
Yeah, yeah. So this movie is kind of an odd one to speak about because it literally is a long walk. I'm like, it's literally a long walk. And it's kind of off-putting at the very beginning when the first person is killed because it's so early on in the long walk. And it happens to be also the youngest one. And so it's just shocking that they tried to do that at the very beginning of the film. But I think because of, like you mentioned, the graphic nature of the film, it's so jarring and shocking when you see all of it on screen that when you start seeing some of the other characters get off throughout the film, it almost becomes a numbing effect, just like it becomes numbing to the actual people on the walk. Those first few people who died, they're all affected by seeing their fellow walkers die at the hands of these soldiers, whose only job is literally to shoot them when they fall out of line.
It's done. The pacing is done so well because
Yes.
it's other than a couple of moments. A lot of times these deaths don't happen back to back. There's a couple of moments that kind of does happen, but a lot of times it's again flies dropping off, and like you forget, like in the back of your head, like you see the soldiers, okay, more people are going to die, but they kind of spread those deaths out throughout the movie and stuff. So you let your guard down a lot, like the boys do, because again, that's what's such great about the chemistry with all the actors and stuff, because you start to like forget a little bit about like, oh yeah, they're all going to die. And every time a boy is picked off, you really feel you are just as scared as long with the actors. And again, like what's again, one key moment, part about the story too is before you are eliminated, you get 3 warnings. So if you're not able to keep your speed after 3 warnings, you're done, unless you get off the path, and then you're immediately taken out. And so every time a character gets a warning, you tense up a little bit because you're just like, oh crap! Like, and especially once a character gets 2, knowing that if they get a 3rd one, they're dead. It really, again, you were like, for me, I was gripping my seat the entire time watching, because it's just like, again, like everyone thinks, oh, I could probably do it, but then which is awesome because I kind of wish I got a chance to do it. But Lionsgate did a special screening where the invited audience has to walk the entire time the movie's going on, and it's something I kind of would have loved to do. But again, everyone's like, oh, I could do that, but then you think about going to the bathroom, you think about water, you think about this, and it really starts to show you like, no, it's not as easy as you think it would be.
Nah, which is why you bring up something I want to make point of. I had to look up his character's name, but the Gary character who kind of plays with the rules, the very first one to play with the rules, when he says he's got a rock in his shoe and he has to stop and take the rock out and tie his shoes up, and he's playing with the soldiers and the warning thing, because they know that even though he might get the third warning, it resets in a few hours. And the other characters may mention that he's playing with the rules, trying to set his own pace because it's going to be a really long journey that they take. But that is like the only sequence where it's actually a playful moment. We do see a sequence where, unfortunately one character has the shits, and he unfortunately can't exactly, he tries his best to, try to shit and walk at the same time. And that happens a couple times in the movie, actually. But the first time you see it, it's like, oh yeah, they can't stop to go to the bathroom. They have to do it while walking. I mean, even the Peter character tells everybody behind them, you gotta make way, I gotta pee, because I can't stop. And it's those things that we get to see, those bodily functions, the stuff that you have to keep in mind, because if you never see it in the film, it would be one of those things that just seems odd that you don't see. Like, these boys are walking for days. I think it's
a lesser movie would not show it,
mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it great that they show it, because it really puts you in the shoes of like, the hopelessness to a
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting when they do that. I mean, even at one point when Ray's shoes, one of his shoes, the soles come off, and it's one of those things where he's only got one shoe. But what happens? They tell him to take off the other shoe because walking uneven in the shoes is going to make it even harder for you to keep walking. I mean, those are the type of things that we get to see on there, and the choices that these characters make on this journey as they just keep walking. Uh, I love the way that plays up in the film, especially when we start seeing the spectators. Now, one of the interesting things I want to bring up with that is that normal spectators, people who live along this road, will come out and watch them, but for the most part, the society at large only shows up at the very end of the story,
Yep.
at the very end, or where they could think of as the end. It's kind of like, I guess they found this part where normally all of these long walks usually end, and they use that as the denouement for the entire race. But they make comment on the fact that as they're walking, there's nobody around. It's like the world they inhabit is a world in which is slowly dying, like they're in the Great Depression era. So
Yes, what's great about too is there's never a news position, there's never a this is what's going on in the world. They throughout the movie they give you sprinkles of what's going on. You get little sprinkles of the world that's going on. You get ideas, and so like there's a great moment where they talk about why they're all there, because so the book, and Stephen King claims that it wasn't really that intention at the time, but it kind of sounds like it was. But the book was an allegory for the Vietnam War at the time, because again, like the general premise is you got young boys who are electing themselves to go because they see it's part of their country. It's not like a Squid Game or a Running Man where it's like, oh, we're doing this for the fame and glory. It's like, no, it is seen as your duty to do it. A little like Hunger Games point, except again, you elect yourselves to, you volunteer to do this because it's seen as a rite of passage, a duty you have to do and stuff. But again, it's like, well, is that really part of the duty, or is it kind of like, again, like joining the army of like when there's a draft and stuff? It's like you elect yourselves, but if the government says, "Hey, you're going to war," if you're the age, you're going to war.
well, that's the one they make a comment at the very beginning of the film. They make comment on the fact that I think it's Ray who makes a comment that even though they volunteered for this to be part of the lottery to be picked, it's not really them being volunteering. It's something that society has more or less told them, instructed them, put in their brains that they have to do, even though they don't really have to do it. It's something that it's just something that's been instilled upon them. And so when you're watching the 50 boys as they first meet each other at the very beginning, the thing I liked about it is that none of them are being very derogatory of having been or being there. They're not like, oh God, I can't believe I've been drafted for this crap.
They're all excited.
They're excited, and even that one little conversation with Ray and his mother in the car, and he had the moment where he could have dropped out, but he never did. Well, eventually we learn the whole story behind why he's there, but at that point we're thinking that this is, even though it's not really an honor because they're all going to die except for one. It's they see it as an honor, and it's part of their patriotic duty, and that's an interesting like concept to put in a film like this, especially like you said, this is Stephen King making this an allegory for Vietnam War, where all the boys, or like World War I, if you remember, where everybody signed up
Yeah,
knowing that they
you
probably were not going to return home, they all signed up because they
and
felt
again, it's you see it in so many war movies too around that era of just like, oh yeah, I drafted like, like they see it as an exciting thing, and then once they see what's going on and they realize the situation that they're in, but again, and never in the movie does a character say, I wish I never like volunteered. You never get that because again, in their mind, because every time everyone a boy is killed, it's never like they're always, they're treated like, oh, they did this for their country, like they're dying for our country. When you look at it, it's like they're dying for nothing, and in the end of the day.
at which it makes it really. I can't remember the character's name, but the one character whose goal is to write an insider's look at what the long walk is, thinking that he's going to be the one that survives. And
Oh, it's number 49. Richard Harkins was the character's name.
okay, so that character right there, it makes it very interesting because from the very beginning, you know he's going to die. He's not going to be one of the ones that survives. But the ideal that he thinks he's going to survive, and he's got this grand future that he thinks he has ahead of him, just like they all do. All of the boys have a grand idea of what will happen, and they just choose not to talk about the fact that only one of them is going to survive. Until we get later in the film, once the conversations start to get a little bit deeper, that's the concept that we're given for most of their journey. Um, but I do want to
Yeah,
bring up the incident that changes a lot of people's atmosphere on this, which is their first night and walking in the middle of the night. And it happens to be uphill, and they still have to maintain that same pace while walking uphill and in the middle of the night, exhausted. And that was, I think they lost. I think 14. They lose 14 people. I think if I remember correctly, they lose.
I think so. It's
Yeah,
one of the few times in the movie where there's multiple. Again, that was such a great
yeah.
scene because again, you start to hit the thought points of like when you go, oh, I could do this. You're like, okay, well, how are you going to sleep? It's like, oh, and again, it's like you experience that with the Ray character where he is like falling asleep while walking and stuff, and the other characters. Again, this is again the brotherhood, the companionship, the other characters like the P character holding on to Ray and making sure he's walking, even though he knows that Ray is passed out. Ray is unconscious, but he is walking
So
because if not, he's dead.
yeah, exactly. And we see that as an extreme later on in the film with the Hank character, who has obviously lost part of his senses because he's just stumbling, walking before his time is finally up. But the thing I want to, because you brought it up multiple times, is the Brotherhood. And of course, the four main characters call themselves the Three Musketeers slash Fourth Musketeer. Between Ray, Pete, Arthur, and Hank were the Three Musketeers. But to be honest with you, it's really Pete and Ray because at certain times in the movie, Hank is off by himself doing his thing, and Arthur is off doing his thing. But until Hank dies, they are the Four Musketeers, and that's how they kind of are seen by some of the other people who are walking because they don't have those bonds like those four characters do during this walk. And I find that very interesting.
Yes. Another like going in with another character that's not in the Musketeers that also I thought was done very well was the Gary character, the bully character, because there's always going to be a bully. But what I liked about this was there's a moment that the character does something, and then ever since then it changes the whole way everyone treats that character after, and it's just so interesting because it easily, especially with the Stephen King story and stuff, it's very easy to do the whole like, oh, genocidal, like, oh, I want to kill everyone, like boy and stuff, and he's like not like he does something that gets someone killed, and the rest of the movie he he legitimately feels bad. He did not attend to do that, and that easily could have been a character who could have been the saboteur. That been all right. I'm gonna try to keep trying to get you guys killed, and it's like no. He again, like every other boy in this walk, is good natured in the end. Like they may have some misunderstandings of whatever, but at the end of the day, they do not want to see 49 people die.
No, I agree with you on there. A whole hell of a lot because excuse me. Because as the film goes on, we start seeing some of the other characters who are still left after some of the other ones are breaking down, and we get to know them just as well. I can't remember the oh, Collie. Collie is his name. I think he's the number 48, and of course the Stebbins. Stebbins, the other character who we find the background of his character is a major plot point and understanding why he's there. Those characters like that, which start off as being in behind background, secondary, by the time you get in the end of the second act into the third act, and you start getting to know these characters more, the thing I liked about this movie is that there are no bad guys in this story, to be honest with you. Not even the Mark Hamill character is all really a bad character. He is a force of nature by the government, but not really an evil or bad character. He's more like almost a cheerleader for the patriarchy and patriotism. But because there's no like bad guy, we see these characters and they break down on their own. At some point in the walk, most of them can't take it physically or psychologically, and that's what gets them. And that's what becomes their undoing. It is not a bad guy that does it. And I really, really liked that aspect of the story.
That's another extra small change is the Stebbins character of the reveals are the same, but what happens, what ends up happening with the Stebbins character is completely different because in the book, Stebbins character was a little bit of an antagonist, like in the movie he's a little antagonist, but again, same deal. Like Stebbins in the book is a little bit more of the stereotypical Stephen King bullying, and this is what I liked about the movie of making him like at the end of the day. He is standoffish. He is, because he's got things that he hasn't revealed and stuff. But he, at the end of the day, again, he doesn't. He just wants to live, but also at the end of the day, he ends up making choices for himself. That again, it's like he's not a bad guy in the end. No one, like you said, none of these boys are bad. None of them are bad. You never ever feel like you never are creating a character to die. If anything, you don't want any of these characters to die. Maybe the bully character a little bit, but by the time you really get to like see everything about him, you feel bad even when he dies. Like there's not a single character I felt watching this movie where I felt satisfied them dying.
No, no, no. And that's one of the things why it's just a tragic movie. And these type of movies are not. Stephen King has done a lot of movies with tragic characters like this. We mentioned The Mist. That's a completely another one in which the tragedy happens to these normal people, and he's so good at it. And then the people who adapt his work are so good at understanding the underlying themes that King crafted, and then taking those and extrapolating and creating something like this or like The Mist that takes those ideals and further develops them even better and even more. Yeah. I mean, this is a strong movie. We're trying to avoid saying any spoilers because it's a new movie, and you can just now stream it, especially by the time this airs.
Now, one thing I'm curious about, and I've heard some complaints about this. I'm personally okay with it. The writing of the Major, played by Mark Hamill. I know some people feel like the character is played too cartoonishly evil and like stereotypical military guy. Me personally, I was fine with it because I understood, like you said, it's more of a nature, like force of nature than anything. I'm like, honestly, if this character had more monologues about, about what they are about and stuff, I think it would, for me, I think it would be too cartoonish.
Oh no, for me, no, no, no. Mark Hamill's the major. It for me, and not just a force of nature, but he is the institution that has crafted the long walk. He tells them the rules, even though he says we're going to skip over these rules because you should already know them. He's the person who kind of reiterates the whole patriotism. You're doing this for your country. This guy has fallen, but the rest of you are still going. He's I never saw him as a villain. Even when he is confronted at the very end, and he's not afraid of dying, he's not afraid of living. He is just a force. He is the institution that has put these boys into where they are. And the thing is, the Ray characters mentioned this institution at the very beginning, this institution that has allowed us to volunteer for this without actually making us volunteer for it. They made it a duty for us to volunteer for it. That's how I see his character. I don't think he's cartoonish or anything like that. I think that because the institution is what the institution is, he has to be this way. If they tried to make him into this three-dimensional character where we saw the background of his family and shit, it would have taken away from how strong that institution is in the lives of the characters and in this world these characters inhabit. That's why I loved what they did with the film. I thought Mark Hamill, who I would never have expected to be in this type of role, was fucking brilliant as the Major.
Oh, when I saw that he was in the movie, that's the reason I went to go see the movie. It was purely because of him. I was like, oh, I want to, and then I heard the great word of mouth, and I was like, and I was so pleasantly surprised. Yes, and I agree with the Major and stuff. What's great too, and they kind of illustrate and stuff. And again, this kind of goes to the ending of the movie. There's no good endings. Like, regardless of what happens, there's not a good ending to this. And there's certain characters that have a vendetta against the Major, and other characters point out even if the Major is taken out, there's just going to be another person that's the new face of the institution. Like, it's not a one evil individual, you take them out and then everything's good. It is society, is the government that has been created in this world, that it doesn't matter. You take out one gear, a new gear gets put in.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I found one of the few funny moments in the film I found when Ray and Peter have started to tell everyone who's still surviving to just tell the Major off. When throughout the whole film, they were saying, "Yo, you can't do that to the Major. He'll have you killed. He'll blah blah blah." But at that point, towards the end of the movie, all of the surviving characters are telling the Major off, knowing that he's not gonna do anything at that point anymore. And he doesn't, because he's the institution, and it doesn't matter what you say to the institution will just keep going, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And I found it funny because it's the first time where all of these kids, after they've seen this horror and their fellow compatriots fall by the hands of guns, most of them by that way. Actually, probably most all of them. I don't think anyone had like a natural death. I think they were all eventually shot.
That's what's cool. That's one thing too, is like they play dirty. Like, they say, okay, if you go out of line, you get shot. But there's at least a couple characters. There's at least a couple characters that try to rebel, and there's a character that meets a not so great end with a tank, and it is
It's graphic,
gruesome. And again, it's purposely, like, again, as an institution of like showing, hey, if you rebel, guess what? This is what happens to you. But again, it goes against the rules a little bit they established at the beginning.
Well, I think the only time where they go a little bit off is when what happens to Hank, and the kids think that they're using Hank, the soldiers, instead of just killing him straight off, they're making him suffer, and it's that thing where they're making him suffer because they believe that the rest of them will stay in line by making him suffer. Um, and I think that's the only time where I think that I can remember, I recall, where they just don't flat out kill people. Now, throughout the entire film, in the background, in the soundtrack, you're hearing them make warnings to random characters that you don't see. And I thought that was really clever. But with Hank, that's probably the most brutal because it's not a really quick death. It is a protracted death. And I don't think there's another one like that in the whole movie, if I remember.
I think there is one. There is a character that gets run over with a tank
Yeah, he gets ran
and
over.
stuff.
They just don't pick him up to get out of the way. They're going to kill him anyways.
Yeah,
Oh, I saw his. Yeah, they shoot him, and unfortunately, there's a tank coming right at him, and he just gets ran over by a tank. But it is
yeah,
gruesome. It is
yeah.
gruesome. Not expecting
And
that.
and again, it's just again them being again their moments being cheap. Again, like another good one. Again, like with the major again about the kind of hypocrism of like, oh, look at you guys, you guys you're surviving, you're barely eating this, that, and the other. And they show that while this is going on, the major like has like a nice little kind of sweet situation going on that he's basically lounging and every once in a while he'll pop back up and like say some words of encouragement again showing the hypocrisy with everything.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a very interesting thought that they say. Of course, while they're all walking at night, he gets to sleep in a nice cozy bed. Uh, and because there's a comment of why he looks refreshed every morning when he makes his little speeches. I was like, yeah, he gets to sleep. um, as it should be in this world. The kids are supposed to be walking, not the grown ups. um, so one thing I do want to make mention of, because we touched upon some of the actors and performances in this film, and I have to mention David Johnson from this because he's one of the reasons why I wanted to see the film, because I'd seen him in Alien Romulus, and he's the only thing I liked in that fucking movie. I'm sorry to say to everyone out there who's listening, I didn't like the movie Alien Romulus. I thought what he did was freaking phenomenal in Alien Romulus. And when I heard that he was in this movie, I was like, oh shit, I need to see other shit that he's in. That was another reason why I wish I'd seen this at the theater. And he does not disappoint at all in this film. Hoffman does a great job, but I think Johnson steals a lot of this movie because he's got such a nuanced performance in this film, just like he did in Romulus. Just like he did in Romulus.
Oh yeah, no, again, I love again, I've loved the him and Romulus. He stole the show in Romulus, and he steals the movie here. Like it's funny because Ray, uh, Copper Hoffman's character is really traditionally your main character and stuff, and he does a great job too. But this again, the Pete character is David is so charismatic, and it's just so this you just love being around him throughout the story and stuff. He really does like, and again, it's not because and again, Copper Hoffman like does a great job too, but just David's just so good that he steals the whole movie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I that's why I wanted to make mention of it. I was like, damn, and just
The problem is it's a horror movie. It's not going to happen because that's just how it is. Honestly, I think both of them deserve a nomination, like in the for the Oscars and stuff. They're not going to because it's a horror movie, and rarely do horror movies get any type of nominations.
I don't know. I don't know. You might see Sinners and Weapons up there.
Yes, because those are mainstream horror movies.
Well,
This
this was mainstream. This one just
it was, but also it 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 broke even. Like it wasn't a big financial like success like Sinners was.
yeah, that's the thing. It's because this was like The Mist. It was one of those films that is so depressing and drab and it's the opposite of say Hunger Games, which I really hate. So everyone's listening, I really hate the
Which is funny because the director did Hunger Games.
I know. But I really hate, that's why I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. I really hate the Hunger Games movies. But because they're all within that dystopian future, they're dressing like warriors, and I'm like, oh my God, I hate this fucking movie. But this movie is like, one is going to survive along this walk. It's like this ain't gonna be five of them going to escape, and that's the ending. They're all gonna die except for one, and it's got that drab ending because as throughout the entire movie you're seeing them picked off, boom, 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 and it's gruesome, and it's like the tank sequence, they're not holding anything back. I just think this is a much more effective film than Hunger Games.
Yeah, I think the reason I think this does a little better than something like a Hunger Games is, again, I think the way you have the characters all being so nice to each other. Again, because you watch the Hunger Games and there's a couple of the characters who are like stereotypical evil and you want to see them die, and they're some of them are mustache twirlers and stuff, versus this, which again, like the bad, like the antagonistic ones, again, by the end you don't even want to see them die. Like, you don't get satisfaction when someone dies. In Hunger Games, you get that satisfaction. It's like, oh yeah, I'm glad this one character got killed. And I think that just says a lot. And also just the way everyone is trying so hard to work with each other, even though they shouldn't be. It's counterproductive, but there's all the so good natured about it. It is, in a weird way, it is very hopeful in tragedy, because it's like, you want, if God forbid, if anyone you got put in a situation like that, you would want everyone around you be like that. Like, I personally have done some of those type of relay races where you're going all the way through like these obstacles and stuff, and there are people, and it's a race, so technically you want to be first, but there are people who are helping each other out when they are having problems getting over an obstacle and stuff, because that's just human nature. You want to help people and stuff. And I think that's it's why this movie is so good with that. It's because it feeds, even though it's depressing and it's a tragedy and stuff, there is some weird hopefulness in there with the way the characters act that you don't get in a Hunger Games, because it's all about, okay, we're following this one character, everyone else needs to die because they're just caricatures, or they're just the villain.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. So, what else can we talk about with this movie? Because without revealing too much about the ending, I'm hoping people have not picked up on how the movie ends. I'm trying to make sure we cover everything, because this is still a recent movie.
The last thing I will probably say about this movie is, again, we talked about how the movie, when it was written, it was relevant to the Vietnam War. It is very funny with the way this movie's been released, how it's still, some of those themings feels very relevant to today's politics. Very relevant.
Yeah, I guarantee you that, that's the thing about movies nowadays, especially nowadays. There's a lot of movies that are incorporating contemporary politics in the world we live in now, despite whenever it was written. Like, to be honest with you, until you said this movie is supposed to be in the 70s, I wouldn't have known what time period this is, because I just see this as a post-apocalyptic movie in which the government has created a Running Man type game that makes people do a long walk. And that's the thing is, this is like the best of Stephen King films, like Stand By Me and some of the other ones. It's kind of a timeless era in which we are watching this film. We don't know the exact date, and it's not important that we do. It's not at all. I mean, this literally looks, like I said earlier, like a Depression era movie, but the ideals are very much not a Depression era. And I think that's one of the things I really, really enjoyed about the movie, because I would have hated seeing shit like cell phones and stuff in this movie. Placing it the way they did, I think makes the movie much more timeless.
Yep, I agree. It is very timeless. It is very much, again, yeah, it's great with how timeless it is.
So, with that, I want to thank you, Philip, for having this conversation with me in regards to the movie, The Long Walk. For everyone who's listening to our conversation, what we like to do now is we like to rate the movie. We go through and rate the movie between 1 and 5, something out of the movie. We normally pick an object or a quote or a saying or something, and we rate the movie between 1 and 5, 1 being poor, 5 being amazingly excellent. Where on the spectrum, Philip, do you place The Long Walk, and what object, quote, or item would you place as?
Again, for me, this was my favorite movie of 2025. I really love this movie. For me, it's a 5 out of 5. Uh, Kids pooping themselves as they walk.
Dude, I was going to say the same damn thing. Because that's such, it's a funny sequence both times it happens, but it's not really funny because the first time the guy has the shits, and the second time is Arthur doing it. He just can't clean himself up afterwards. But I was gonna do that myself, so I guess I'll have to pick something else, which will be oh shit, 4.5. Pete's taking a piss on the people behind him. That scene was just hilarious as shit. There's another scene that was funny to me because he warns the characters to watch out. And everyone who's not keeping pace with him, they just in the way or they get out of the way. So that's I'm gonna rate the movie. It would be higher up for me. There's barely you can go higher than 4.5 of anything. But I do need to give this movie a little bit more time and rewatch it a couple times because it's close to being up there with Stand By Me with Me and Misery, which are two of my all-time favorite Stephen King adaptations. Those are flawless in my opinions, 5 out of 5. And it's very close to being up there with those two, I have to say. So, with that, I want to thank everyone for listening to us talk about The Long Walk. Hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation and you will check out all of our previous episodes of the show. We've done a lot of amazing episodes on a lot of great horror films. And like I said before, we are going to start doing a lot more modern movies so that you get an idea of what we think about what's contemporary. That being said, please make sure to like, follow, share, subscribe, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast on your favorite podcast app, Spotify or YouTube. And please make sure to check out our sister podcast, Conversations in Hammer Studio Horrors, in which we delve deep into the bowels of 60s and 70s Hammer Studio films. So for all of you classic horror film lovers out there, you're going to love that podcast. Trust me on that one. So please check that one out as well. That is every first and third Friday of the month, 8 a.m. We release episodes in that one. From all of us here, Something Wicked Entertainment, please have a great day, and we will see you on the next episode. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production. Written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers. Executive producer, Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.